recording of the meeting will be made available as soon as possible after the meeting has concluded. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings, but I've had no request to speak in Welsh today, so the meeting will be conducted in English only. Members, can you please refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. Can I also remind you that as per statutory guidance made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 and our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending a meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public who may be viewing the meeting. So can I ask you all, please, that you use your cameras for the duration of the meeting. Please, can I also remind you to keep your microphone muted when you're not speaking. Do not interrupt discussions until you've been notified of your intention to speak and have been invited to do so. Okay. Jade, do we have any apologies this morning, please?
Thanks, Chair. No apologies this morning.
Do we have any declarations of interest? No.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come in quickly and give Councillor Richard Clark, the exec members, apologies for this morning.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Can we move on to Agenda 3, the minutes of the meeting of the 29th of February? Members, a reminder that these are the minutes of the meeting where we scrutinise the CIW rapid review of child protection. Could you state you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes or not? If not, I will take them as agreed. Agreed? Okay, thank you. We go on to agenda item 4, which is our action sheet. Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair. So, members, there were 2 actions on the action sheet from the last meeting, one of which was the responses to the recommendations that you made at the last meeting, which you've all received, and there was also the action for the Head of Children and Family Services to supply a draft of the action plan, and again, you have all received that now. Thank you.
We move on to our, agenda item 5, but before we commence our discussions, I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome the Executive Member for Children, Families and Education, Jason O'Brien, who is a Strategic Director, and also Kirsty Cook, the Interim Group Manager of Children and Family Services. Both of you, would you like to sort of give us a brief introduction to the report before we start questioning?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. First of all, before I start, the report's written by Jacqueline Richards. Unfortunately, Jacqueline's on leave today, so unable to attend. What I would say before I delve into the report is, I'm sure members will agree, it's a very thorough report. I think as Jacqueline always provides a strong report. A very thorough report that I don't intend to go through verbatim, obviously. There's a lot of information within. I think the key points for me to raise are Torfaen has and continues to have the highest children looked after population. However, within recent years, we've made strident steps to safely reduce that looked after population and have gone from annual increases of 15% previously to within this last 12 months, our looked after population has reduced by 12%. So real change in direction of travel for us in being able to safely manage and safely reduce that looked after population. It's alluded to at the end of the report some of the rationale for that, some of the reasons that sit behind that, which relate to our strength-based practice that we have within the service area, a focus upon moving children out of the looked after system when it's safe to do so, and enabling a real focus upon what families can achieve with minimal intervention. I think it's worth highlighting that as a starting point, because even though we're here to discuss placement sufficiency today, our key objective is to actually reduce the need for placement sufficiency. So whilst I think the report focuses upon where we are in terms of placement availability and the different levels of placements that we have, and as it stands at the moment, the need to have more placements, obviously our key line of sight is around continuing to reduce our looked after population and in turn reducing the need for, I guess, more placements and that placement sufficiency. So the report outlines where we've made strident moves and where there has been a reduction in recent years. As a director, I'm exceptionally proud of the way the service has managed that and been able to reduce our looked after population and really turn the curve over the last couple of years. We will know that when a child becomes looked after, there are a number of different placements, placement options and placement availability for us. In the first instance, what we will always try to do, obviously, is keep a child within its family environment, within their family environment, and look for wider family members, so that disruption for that child is limited, and that's referred to as kinship carers, kinship foster carers. We also have a cohort of children who are, despite being looked after, are actually placed with their parents, and that's generally as part of a rehabilitation plan when we're stepping children back down and ultimately moving them on from being looked after. We also then have our in-house foster placements, our in-house foster schemes. And again, one of the things I'm exceptionally proud of there is that proportionately across the country, we have the highest rate of in-house foster carers in comparison to independent foster agency carers. And I think that's, the credibility goes, or a lot of credence there goes to our foster team, our family placement team, and the support they're able to provide our foster carers, and the high-quality foster carers that we have within the local authority as well. We also then have children who are placed in residential provision. As is highlighted within the report, and as members will be aware, we currently now have no in-house residential provision. That is something that we're looking to develop, and have been doing so within the last couple of years. It's a bit of a slow process, but looking to develop our own in-house residential provision, in acknowledgement that there are always going to be a cohort of children with complex needs and challenges that will require a different level of care that meets their needs. And then the last form of placement is our OWRs, which is our placements operating without regulation, or operating without regulation. And they are our placements where we are unable to source anything, any regulated placement through CIW. And unfortunately, we find ourselves occasionally in a position where we have to place children in unregulated placements. Where we do place children in unregulated placements, we make sure that there are all effective safeguards around those placements, and that we move those children on as quickly as we can. Even though they're unregulated placements, we have had some success stories with some of those children in placements as well, where we've been able to move them on quite effectively. So I guess that's the menu of placements we have available there in front of us, which highlights where we have clear strengths in terms of our in-house provision for foster carers and deficits in terms of our residential provision. I won't delve into the report any further. I think they'll just offer back to members for questioning. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Do you want to come in, Kirsty?
I think that's a good summary. I don't have anything to add at this stage.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Jason, we'll start our questioning. First question comes from myself, and it relates to paragraph 4.4 of the report. All children in residential care homes were residing out of county, with one child placed in England. What impact does this have on the child, on the family, and also of those working with the family?
Thank you. We avoid as much as we possibly can placing children outside of our local area. We're really driven to try and keep our children and young people within Torfaen close to their family networks, and therefore able to have that regular, very crucial contact with their families. We recognise that placements outside of the local area aren't ideal. However, we do everything in our power to make sure that they continue to have regular contact with their families, and we ensure that they have suitable education provision by liaising with our colleagues within the education department.
Jason.
Obviously, Chair, there is an impact. There's an impact because that child may be moving further away from family links. But as Kirsty's pointed out, our clear focus is ensuring and maintaining that they're as close within their communities and families as possibly can be. Where we have children who are placed out of county as well, some of them will have been there for a significant period of time. So some of those children who are placed out of county, their communities are now within those areas, and their attachments and stability is maintained within those areas as well. It has an impact upon social care staff as well, because of obviously the geographical distance and having to travel back and forth, I guess. But with those children who are out of county, there's a reassurance for me that we have clear plans in place and clear monitoring for them in place. And for some of them, being out of county is in their best interests. And for some of them, being out of county can, on occasion, be 10 foot over the border. Because we'll have some children who are placed in Newport, some children within some of our neighbouring local authorities. So we're able to, even though they're placed out of county, they're still able to maintain their community links.
Thanks, Jason. We move to question 2, which comes from Councillor David Williams.
Thank you, Chair. And I think you kind of started answering this question, really, which was to try and understand the differences in terms of monitoring the child placed out of county but out of region, and out of county but in region, because as you rightly said, it can be still very close for families. So it was also trying to understand if that placement out of county and out of region is due to lack of available spaces, or is it a question of a gap in suitable provision? So there's 2 parts to that. I hope that's clear.
It's both, and a third, I would say. So there is, on occasion, lack of provision where, on a Friday afternoon, if we're searching around for a placement and, placement becomes available in Newport and Cardiff and we don't have any placements available here, obviously there's some children who come into the looked after system out of hours as well. So there's an increasing limited level of provision there. Some children as well, particularly I think children within the residential settings, they're very often bespoke packages of care that are placed around those children. So sometimes it's around their needs and their levels of complexity. And for others, of course, being placed at a county, like I said, sometimes being placed at a county means that we're able to maintain them within their family setting as well. So there's 3 strands, I think, in terms of why children are placed at the county.
Thank you.
Okay. The next question comes from Councillor Steve Evans.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've partly answered this one as well with that response. In the absence of a suitable IFA placement being identified, a request will be made to the Head of Children and Family Services for authorisation for a residential placement search. Can I ask what factors are considered when identifying the most appropriate out-of-county placement?
Thank you. We would always firstly try and place a child within a foster placement. We recognise that most of the children and young people that we are searching for placements for, their needs can be met within a foster placement. Sadly, because of a lack of availability of our foster placements and IFA foster placements, we end up in a position where there are no alternatives other than a residential placement. So we work hard then, once a child is in a residential placement, to be looking to bring children back to foster placement, again recognising that that is in their best interest for them to be within a foster placement. We also recognise, and I think it's clear within the report, that a lot of residential placements are out of area. So again, as like the first question, we then find ourselves in a position where it's difficult to manage and places additional stress, having children placed outside of area. There's lots of factors to consider.
Jason.
We recognise as well, Councillor, that for some children, albeit we go through that the processes of looking at in-house foster placements and independent foster placements, for some children, residential placements are a right placement for them at a given time. Not in any, I would suggest for the vast majority of children, not in any long-term basis, but for some children, a residential placement is the right move for them initially as well.
Lucy, do you want to come in?
Sorry, do you mind if I ask a little tiny supplementary to that? So, looking at children who have to be placed out of county or fostered out of county, how does the connection work then between social services and education if it's liable that the child, I mean, if it seems that the child may have to go to a different school, how does that communication work between different social services areas, different education authorities, just understanding how that would work?
Internally, I would hope that with Children's Services and Education being in one directorate, I would hope the communication would work effectively. And we do have some children who are placed out of county, and because it's a very short-term plan or medium-term plan that they're placed at the county, we bring them back into their schools within Torfaen, so that they've got, schools for young people are the most stable places on occasions, aren't they? So we bring them back and forth when we've got a short to medium-term plan. We liaise. When we have a child that's placed at a county, we've got a responsibility to liaise with the local authority where that child is placed. So we make sure that takes place, so that a local authority doesn't suddenly wonder where a child sprang up from within their local authority. I would say that within Torfaen we don't always have that back. I think we have some residential placements, private residential placements within Torfaen, where the children are placed not from neighbouring authorities but from authorities over the bridge perhaps, where we don't always have that communication and notification. But I think they're few and far between, but in many senses we don't know what we don't know there. And then our colleagues within education liaise with their counterparts in education, where we have children who are placed in out-of-county education provision as well, to ensure that communication is effective. I don't think there's anything you want to add, Kirsty.
Okay, Lucy? Thank you. No one up, so we'll move on to question 4 from Councillor Benena.
Thank you, Chair. 4.11, sorry. The business case proposed that the additional investment could support the service to reach a target of 90% in-house foster placements by 2025-26, thus furthering strengthening our position, reducing the use of costly IFA placements and ensuring that more children are placed within their local community. So my question is, do we have any knowledge or feedback as to why someone would choose to be a foster carer for IFA rather than TCBC, for example? Is it an easier process? Is it a different type of process? I'm just wondering as why that would be. And also, do they work well with TCBC for the child's best interest? Though I think you touched on that, to be honest, in your opening speech. I think so.
Thank you. I think previously to Foster Wales, the creation of Foster Wales, I think our advertising or looking to seek foster carers wasn't as strong, and I think the IFAs are very good at advertising and putting themselves on social media and paying for adverts on the television, radio, etc. I think Foster Wales has certainly strengthened our presence and the brand of Foster Wales, where it's brought the 22 local authorities together. So I think we're making some progress here, quite significant progress. But I think that we've certainly suffered previously by not having that level of presence out there. I'm sure some members would have seen banners out in the community. We've had advertising go out with council tax bills. We've certainly got more presence on radio, television, and we're running lots of campaigns on a national basis. We've recently run the campaign around what can you bring to the table, which was really successful, and I think it's really getting our presence out there for Foster Wales. So that would be my take on what they're doing better, or have they been doing better, IFAs.
You happy with that, Catherine?
I am, and yeah, I agree. There's definitely been an increase of the advertising. I've seen it across social media. So I think you're right that we've definitely stepped up in that department. Thank you.
Jane.
Thank you. Just to clarify, because I think part of Councillor Bonera's question was whether the IFAs work with TCBC along for the child's best interest, or do we work together at all? Do they work with TCBC, or are they totally independent?
Yes, absolutely. They do work with Torfaen County Borough Council and other local authorities. Yeah, I would say we do have a good relationship with our colleagues who in the IFAs, and certainly the children's social workers and the IFA providers and their supervising social workers work very closely together around placements.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next question is question 5, and it comes from Councillor Linda Clarkson.
Thank you, Chair. Again, it's a little bit more information around 4.11 of the report, and the fact that the business case proposes that an additional investment could support the service to reach the 90% target in-house foster placements by 2025-26. So my question is, are we on a track to achieve this target? What are the potential barriers, challenges that we have to meet to achieve this?
I think following the investment into the service, we've made lots of changes in terms of our offer to foster carers. We're certainly in a position now where all foster carers have supervising social workers, we've community support workers who are able then to further support foster carers. We've increased our offer in terms of financial package for foster carers. We also have our recruitment and development officer who was previously case holding and now is able to fully dedicate her time to recruitment of foster carers. Members will note from the report that we haven't necessarily succeeded in recruiting lots more foster carers, which we would have hoped, and unfortunately we have lost a number of foster carers for various reasons. Since the investment, we continue to work really, really hard to try and get foster carers through the door and approved for us. I think it's a longer term piece of work, and we continue with all our efforts.
Jason, do you want to come in?
In the last couple of years, that figure has fluctuated as well. It's gone up and down. 9% continues to remain our target figure. We've had a high of 86%, which exceeded that which we outlined within the county plan as one of our measures for that period of time. Unfortunately, we've taken a bit of a dip now, but I think the figure in terms of a percentage rate can be quite volatile. An 80%, like I say, exceeded the target figure for a particular year. But we need to make sure we're building that momentum and understanding the reasons why we aren't, or why we're recruiting and why we aren't recruiting.
Okay. Anyone want to come in?
Yes, please.
Councillor Seabourn, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Yeah.
Apologise.
Yeah, I just wanted, as a supplementary to that, are we of the same pay level with local authority payments as we are with independent foster agencies?
No. We do pay quite significantly less than IFA.
And would you consider that being a cause of us losing foster carers?
I don't think necessarily losing foster carers. I think generally once a foster carer comes into our fold, because of the level of service we provide, they stay with us. I think in terms of, there is a financial element to it, and with the private providers, there's an element of profit that's built into that as well. And, you've only got to see the difference in the fees that they charge the local authority for some of those placements, that you can see where, where profit is being made and where they can afford to increase payments to other foster carers. The Eliminate Agenda, which is highlighted in the report as well, aims to eradicate, or aims to eliminate that profit. So hopefully in a couple of years' time, once that eliminated gender takes impact, we will start to see a bit more of a balance. And I don't think we'll ever reach the same levels as IFAs, but we'll start to see a bit more of a balancing of that.
Thank you.
Okay, Rose, you've sat.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Clarkson, you want to come in?
Yeah, just briefly, recognise the fluctuation and the huge amount of work that's been done recently. So would it be helpful if this was something that was revisited in the future, maybe halfway towards the target date?
Absolutely, yeah, and I think it'll be something in terms of that target as well that will be revisited within cross-cutting scrutiny and within council as well, because, like I say, it forms part of our county plan, part of the delivery programme there. So I think it'll be scrutinised and examined in a couple of different forms, but yeah, there's absolutely no reason why this is. Placement sufficiency is going to be a topic for us always. So I think, yeah, it would be good to bring it back at some point in the future.
That's great. Thanks ever so much.
Okay, Lucy. Linda, you happy? Jane, do you want to come with the next question, please?
Thank you, Chair. Section 4.16 refers to 4 fostering households indicated that fostering had not met their expectations. Have we worked with these households to explore exactly in what way it didn't meet their expectations so that we can better inform future potential fosterers?
Yes, as we say within the report, we offer every foster carer an exit interview, and I was doing those myself when as fostering team manager. What we've seen, I think is fair to say, is lots of foster carers who were approved during the COVID-19 period. Many of those we have subsequently lost from the service. I think there's lots of reasons that could be given around that. I think many of our fostering assessments were undertaken virtually, so they were less robust. Preparation or skills to foster course was undertaken virtually, which presented lots of difficulties for us. And I think during the COVID-19 period, people made lots of changes to their lives, didn't they? And I think perhaps, you know, change of career and lots of change of circumstances led them into fostering potentially. And I think fair to say that perhaps it wasn't all they expected it to be. And I think several of the households that we've lost over this period could potentially be linked to that. Okay. Anyone else want to?
Okay. Next question is question 7 from Councillor David Williams.
Yeah, this follows on and builds on that, really. So you mentioned that exit interviews are offered, so we just get some feel about what the take-up for that is. And then there was mention in the report, again at 416, about Fostering Network doing a pilot project, writing to foster carers who've been deregistered and offering an independent exit interview. So it was really sort of what's been coming back from that in terms of, so take-up and feedback are the 2 elements here. And I think you've already touched on some of the feedback bit with the COVID stuff. So.
Yes, when I meet with foster carers, when they choose to take up that exit interview, I've gathered lots of different feedback, which I've fed back into the service in different ways, through management groups and also with some learning for the team. In terms of Fostering Network and their offer of exit interviews as part of their pilot scheme, we're one of the local authorities that have taken that offer up. Okay. You know, we really want to learn from foster care feedback across all areas of our service. And we're awaiting their first feedback from Fostering Network because they're keen to provide that more regionally, sort of anonymously, so that they can provide real honest feedback for us. So I don't have anything at this stage that I'm able to share with members.
Now, thank you. I think that clarifies that point. Just quickly, in broad terms, what sort of proportion of people take up exit interviews? Is it around half, a third? You know, not wanting to put you on the spot, but it's just getting some feel, really. Is it taken up by many? That's.
I would say that it isn't taken up by many. I would say that we offer exit interviews with supervising social worker or manager, or there's various options as to who can undertake the exit interview. I'd be reluctant to provide a figure at this point because I wouldn't know for certain. But I would say it's relatively low uptake internally.
No, that's fine. It was just to get some rough feel, and I can understand then getting the exit interview information from Fostering Network will be helpful as well. So I think we've covered that. Thank you, Chair.
Jason, do you want to come in?
Just what we do have as well, aside from the exit, I guess the face-to-face exit interviews, is foster carers email and write in and outline their position as well. And then when a foster carer is deregistered, that goes through an agency's decision-making process, so the Head of Children's Services signs that off to deregister them. And very often, when I used to do that, I'd be looking at the comments and feeding those comments back into the service area as well, just to make sure we were really taking those any elements, good, bad, and ugly, on board. Really,
that's very helpful.
Okay, no one else wants to come in on that question. We'll move on to question 8 from Councillor Lucy Williams.
Thank you. You've mostly answered this question because it's understanding about the role of Foster Wales. I guess it's also just then to understand if you can see further, because it's quite a new collaboration, what kind of further benefits can you see from this joint working?
I think as we go, we're developing more, and I think the relationships between the 22 local authorities working nationally actually are really strong, and we share really good practice, and we share policies, we share lots of things. So I think we've got a really strong local network, but also a strong national network, and I think Foster Wales is kind of going from strength to strength. So I see really good things that have come to date, and really think good things that are planned for the future.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
David, do you want to take question 9, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. This was in 418 and 419. You've outlined a couple of things here about having a dedicated recruitment development officer, and whilst the activities increased, it's not led to some of the increase in fostering households, and it's also 17 recruitment events referred to. So it's really kind of what's been the outcome of the events. Are we assessing the effectiveness and an impact of this? Because obviously you can't carry on putting lots of resource in and not getting something back. So it's about how are we trying to fine-tune that, I suppose.
I think we intend to continue with the high level of fostering recruitment events. The recruitment and development officer has made really significant progress since being able to dedicate 100% of her time to her role. She really has developed some really strong links with colleagues across Torfaen. And we're building year on year on the offer again to foster carers. In terms of monitoring how effective those events are, again, I think it's about us getting our brand out there, and I think it's recognised that some people need to see the brand for up to 2 years before they then decide to make that crucial inquiry for us. And even then, sometimes even making that inquiry, they're not quite at a point where they wish to become foster carers. But it's about us following that up, potentially giving them another call in a year's time, or offering a home visit, giving some more information. So I think it's that drip effect of filtering the brands out into the community, and hopefully we'll reap the rewards of that.
Well, thank you. I think that does cover it very well, actually, in terms of its building process. So thank you for that.
Jane.
Yeah, can I just ask a supplementary? So you're saying quite understandably that some people may take up to 2 years, or, obviously it's got to fit in with their own lifestyle. Once they've made that decision and the assessment starts, is there an average time period that assessment will take?
Yes, absolutely. We're committed to, wherever possible, completing those assessments within 6 months. We aim for 4 months, but because as you will understand, of the volume of information that those assessments capture. Sometimes there's delays with gathering certain pieces of information that we require as part of that assessment. So absolutely, aim for 4 months, but up to 6 months. Doesn't very often go over 6 months.
And I think you can see from that the whole process is very rigorous. You know, there are references interviewed, family members interviewed, ex-partners interviewed, so it isn't just a case of, do you want to become a foster carer? Yes, that's great. There's the volume of information and the volume of assessment is really, really significant, and it has to be, doesn't it?
Can I ask a question? Do we get single parents wanting to become foster?
Yes, absolutely, and we've run specific marketing campaigns to try and dispel myths around fostering and encourage people from every background to apply to become a foster carer if it's something they wish to do.
I was just going to, every child that comes in to be looked after, you know, is unique. Every child, you know, they have and we want as diverse a selection of foster carers as we can possibly get, so that we're able to match, you know. So, yeah, there's no such thing, I don't think, really, as a traditional foster carer or a standard foster carer. We really want to encourage and attract that diversity as well.
I can also ask, is there an age limit that you've taken on for foster carers?
No, there's no set age limit.
That's brilliant. Jane.
Thank you. Are you still finding that a lot of these myths are out there, that you're still myth-busting, or do you think you're making some headway with that?
I would hope that we're making some headway. However, I would not be confident that we've dispelled the myths, and there's still definitely work to be done around that.
Yeah, one last tiny one, sorry, it's all about myth busting. Have you had, or are there myths around colleagues from the LGBT plus community looking to be foster carers?
Yes, I think there have been, but I think we've made lots of progress there, and yes, as we said, we encourage people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, and we need to meet the individual needs of our children. So yeah,
thank you.
Okay, next question, question 10, comes from Councillor Clarkson.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a bit more information and expansion on the report regarding 4.18 paragraph. As local authorities have all received the additional funding from Foster Wales with a view to employing recruitment and development officers within their services, have other local authorities been having more success in increasing the number of fostering households as a result of the dedicated officers? Are we liaising across areas to find out what experiences other teams are having? And have we learned anything from what anyone else is doing? Or are we teaching other people from what we're doing?
thank you. I would say we're absolutely learning from each other. We work really closely together. We have regular regional meetings and regular national meetings where we share good practice. We share ideas regularly, and that's from us to other people and vice versa. We're definitely learning together and working together really closely to make progress. Yes.
Okay, Linda? Anything else, Linda?
Yeah, that answers it sort of in the round, but it's early days, a lot more work to be done.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Our last question comes from Councillor Seaborn.
Thank you very much. And just a point of information, I would think I was on the fostering panel when we first appointed our first LGBTQ couple, and it was quite an event, I can assure you. My question is relating to 420, which is the retention activity. I'm just wondering whether or not, if they do, or could these activities include prospective foster carers to encourage greater take-up?
I think that's a good suggestion. I guess with any of these events, though, quite often we are limited in terms of the numbers that we are able to accommodate. One of the events that we ran last year, which had a tremendous uptake, was up at the ski slope, where we did a tubing event for young people and children, and they absolutely loved it. But it was full, and we weren't able to accommodate all of the children and young people who wanted to go on it. So we're looking to run it again this year with our colleagues from the ski slope. So, but certainly something to consider. Thank you, Councillor Seaborn.
Yeah, one of the we introduced the lunch for foster carers when I was in the position, and it was one of the things that came out of that was they don't often get to speak to each other. I think we've improved on that over the years, but certainly a prospective foster parent talking to a long-term foster parent might go a long way in recruitment, I think.
Yes, we do have fostering mentors, and we ask that they come along to our preparation to foster course or our skills to foster course to talk to foster carers about the realities of being a foster carer. And the other thing we currently have, albeit not a Torfaen foster carer, our skills to foster course for mainstream foster carers is run by a foster carer, which is really helpful. He can give that day-to-day insight as to the realities of fostering. But yes, I agree.
Oh, that's good. Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, that concludes our first pause of questioning. Do we want to consider anything now, or move on and leave everything to the end of the meeting? Anyone? Move on, okay. Our next question, care homes for children operating without registration. I've got the first question. In a national report published in 2019, CIW identified there was a lack of suitable placements able to meet the needs of a small but growing number of children. What has been done since the report findings were published back in 2019 to address the issue? Has an exercise been conducted to identify the evolving needs and how these can be best accommodated?
Thank you, Chair. So since 2019, and as I mentioned at the start, one of the ongoing pieces of work we've got is development of our own in-house residential provision. Torfaen's never had any in-house residential provision, so we've had to start from square one in order to build that up, and it's quite a protracted process. The provision we're looking to set up will accommodate 2 young people. And I think there's a strategy going forward, because we know that there will, as I said, be a cohort of young people with complex needs that will require residential care. We're looking to build that up as we go forward as well, and particularly in readiness for the Eliminate legislation coming into play. Sorry, Chair, what was the second part of the question?
Has an exercise been conducted to identify the evolving needs, and how can we best accommodate them?
Yes. We're aware of the needs of every child that we have within our looked after system, but particularly within our residential cohort, because those needs are fairly significant. There are some there, I would say, that don't require to be in residential care, and the only reason they are in a residential setting is because of lack of availability elsewhere, and we do all we can to move those out as quickly as possible, obviously. But I think in terms of our understanding of that cohort, it'll probably come as no surprise. I think there is a knock-on effect from COVID, and an emotional impact upon children and families and parents through that time that's given an added complexity. And we're seeing a lot of children come through with needs that are being resourced through CAMS and through some of the mental health services. So we're aware of the needs of that cohort. Like I say, every child is unique, though, and every child will come with their own bespoke package of care, or their own needs, and their own bespoke package of care will be developed as a result of that as well. Then.
So it's an evolving situation. It's constantly changing.
Absolutely, and I think even when we think we've got a grip of it, it'll constantly change because, like I say, the uniqueness of the children that we work with.
Anybody else want to come in on that subject? We'll move on to the next question. Councillor Linda Carson. Question 13.
Thank you, Chair. This is regarding 4.28 and 4.29 of the report, and what we recognise is a UK-wide issue, the fact that the lack of available placements residentially is requiring the development of alternative arrangements and the use of these unregulated care placements. Under the RISCA 2016, it's stated to be an offence to provide a regulated service without registration. So I suppose what we're looking to understand is how this situation is being managed, how, if anything, can we sort of, we've got the 2 placements coming up, but can we sort of, it's difficult to put this into words really, how can we sort of reduce the sort of risks? How is this working across all local authorities, across the country really?
Across all local authorities, every local authority within Wales is in the same position in terms of residential provision and a deficit in residential provision. Even those local authorities have their own in-house provision as well. You know, I think demand is outstrip supply. For us, in terms of how we manage the process, when we do have a young person or child that we need to place in an unregulated placement, obviously, as the report says, we notify Care Inspectorate Wales immediately and work continually with Care Inspectorate Wales so they're aware of our planning processes for that child and how we're attempting to move that placement on, and that there's that extra level of, I guess, scrutiny and rigorous challenge from CIW around that as well. For some children, like I say, some children, an unregulated placement at a particular time, it meets their needs and enables us to move them on into another placement. We have, when we have an unregulated placement, because of the unregulated element of it as well, we ensure that as an authority, you know, as a service area, we put extra layers of support and scrutiny within that as well. So, you know, there are weekly, if not occasionally daily meetings with the multidisciplinary team that sits around that child. So it could be the health education, the providers themselves who are involved as well. So we ensure that there's that extra, you know, that real rigorous approach to managing those children in unregulated placements. I think there will always, I'm be cautious how I say this, but there will always be a need to use unregulated placements. And like I say, you know, there could be an example on a Friday afternoon where absolutely no placement can be found. So a child could be placed just in an unregulated placement for a weekend, whilst a foster placement or an alternative placement is established for them, or could just be in an unregulated placement overnight. So, and you know, there will always be those emergency situations where unregulated placement would be. We've always been able to manage a very low number within that cohort of unregulated placements. But crucial for us is that are those links with CIW and making sure we're giving CIW the information and that we're able to, you know, reassure them we're developing move-on plans and that we're doing everything we can and meeting the best interest of that child.
Thanks ever so much for that. Is the context that I was really looking for around that and the mitigation of this extra safeguarding and the involvement of CIW would seem to cover it. Just seems like it's an odd situation that local authorities have been placed into, that we're in the unfortunate situation that we have to use unregulated placements, but it is a UK-wide issue.
Absolutely. What I should have added as well, the Councillor, is that for those unregulated placements, authority authorisation for those, so in terms of level of accountability, that has to come from me. Right. That can't even be determined through the head of service. That's a specific Torvine arrangement we have. So we've got that high level of responsibility and accountability and understanding and scrutiny from me then as well of what are we doing, how are we moving this on.
Yeah, brilliant. That's the context I was looking for. Thank you very much.
Jane, do you want to come in, please?
Thank you. Yeah, just a quick question. You said that some of the young people that are placed there could be overnight, could be a weekend. That's very understandable. Are you able to say, on average, how long some of them are?
Off the top of my head, we can work out an average. I mean, we have had some that will have been in an unregulated placement for 6 months, in excess of 6 months. But again, you know, we've ensured that there's that rigorous process around them, and I would say that those young people have moved on quite effectively as well. Some of those young people have moved on quite effectively, and an unregulated placement has worked for them. Albeit, you know, we're not going to rest on laurels and say we still need to avoid them. But average, I couldn't give you an average, but there is a variation of 1 night to 6 months, 9 months. It can be quite extensive.
Okay, thank you.
Jen was next, but I think it's been more or less answered. Are you happy to move on? So we move on to the National Transfer Scheme, which is question 15, and the first question comes from Councillor Steve Evans.
Thank you, Chair. This is to do with paragraph 4.34. The NTS requires that receiving authority has placed the child or young person within 10 working days of referral. We have achieved this target on all but one occasion. And the reason I'm asking the question is, what are the implications of missing the 10 working day target on a child? And what financial support is available for the supported of UASC?
So if I answer this in reverse, there's a financial package that comes with unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, so that, you know, from a local authority point of view, those children, the cost of placing those children is found through central government. If we're unable to find a placement, or there's almost a carrot at the front of it, in that I think it's 10 days. If we're able to find a placement within 10 days, there's a financial reward. So there are finances, additional finances that come with that. I think it's something like £6,000. If we can't find within 10 days, that £6,000 doesn't come. So but then the continuation of finances for that placement of that child comes.
And you don't want to come back in, Steve?
No, I just wanted to know that, because I look at it, and I'm sure there was financial implications. You know, to lose £6,000 is quite an ask if you can't find that position. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think what we've alluded to already is around, you know, well, the placement sufficiency and sometimes an inability to find the correct placement. But I think it's an achievement. I think that we've managed to, you know, all but one, and, you know, that one child, I don't know, but it may have just been a day, may have been 11 days, I can't recall, but, you know, we will have found a placement for that child.
Okay. Next question, question 16, comes from Linda, Councillor Clarkson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Again, it's around 4.35 of the report, unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. And the question is, what additional expertise is needed and what advocacy is offered these children that we are caring for? What partner agencies, if any, are we working with in providing this support locally and at a regional level? And would this be sort of an example of when out-of-area placement may be more appropriate?
Absolutely, in terms of the last point of your question, Councillor, and, you know, we do have a number of our unaccompanied asylum-seeking children are placed in you know, out of county, in larger cities. We have some placed further up the country, where there's a greater level of diversity and services that will meet their needs. Obviously, every child that becomes looked after by us has the offer of advocacy. There's the offer, again, or not an active offer in terms of interpretation services for children that come through who may speak a different language. And of course, then we pull in with any child dependent upon age. You know, if they're pre-16 and of school age, we'll obviously be pulling in a lot of our education services around that. It follows, though, that the vast majority of our unaccompanied asylum seekers, and I may be corrected here, but the vast majority of our unaccompanied asylum seekers are over 16 and between that 16 and 18 age range. So very quickly as well, move on to become care leavers. So, you know, we have had some children who've come within the National Transfer Scheme who've been 17 years and 10 months. And very quickly then, you know, moving on to adulthood. But they attract a care leaving status with them as well then, so we ensure that, you know, there are right services in place for them once they leave care and are past the age of 18 as well.
Okay, Linda?
Yeah, thank you for that response. That's quite a comprehensive answer to that question.
Jane, you want to come in, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So can you explain just in a little more detail what care leaving status gives them then? What additional support or benefits does that give them?
Again, it depends upon need, level of need, but, you know, ensuring that they don't become homeless, that there's accommodation provided for them, ensuring that, you know, our young people advisors within our TIPS team continue to provide services and support for them. Again, it'll be very much dependent on their needs. Some move out of area straight away, pretty much. Some stay within area, looking for employment opportunities for them, you know, making sure that that they have the same level of service that a care leaver that comes through any other mechanism has as well.
Jane. Rose, do you want to?
Yes, please, Chair. I just wondered what kind of support follows them into their schools. Is there specific school support that is provided for these young people, those that are in attendance and education in the borough?
Sorry, Councillor, could you repeat that again?
Yes, I said I wanted to ask what kind of support is given to our schools who actually take on these unaccompanied asylum-seeking children.
Again, it's going to be crafted around individual schools and individual needs, because our cohort of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and those that are pre-16 is quite low. There isn't anything we've done in a generic sense, but, you know, we ensure that all the services in terms of interpretation and stuff like that are factored in within whichever school they attend.
Thank you.
I've got the last question in this section. How confident are we that we have suitably qualified staff to look after the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who come to us after having life-changing experiences and traumas, and they will bring their own challenges to our foster care teams?
Yeah, I think it's a real challenge, because I think, you know, the lived experiences of some of these children that come to us within the National Transfer Scheme, you know, is eye-watering. You know, it presents them with real complexities and challenges. Again, I think going back to the point we raised earlier around diversity and ensuring you know, that this is where we want to build up, not just for the National Transfer Scheme, but ensuring that we've got that diverse population across our caring profession, not just within our foster carers as well, but within our staff. And you know, there is a deficit there. Certainly, I'd be lying if I didn't say that there was a deficit in terms of the consistency of provision we're able to provide for these children, because they come to us out of nowhere, in many senses. And whereas, you know, I guess we know our population needs, as it stands within Torfaen, when you have a child coming, you know, from Afghanistan or Iraq or something, you know, we don't fully understand their needs. But it's about flexing and making sure we're responsive, making sure, you know, that we've got a good level of service around them. We have a designated individual within our TIPS team, within our aftercare team, who's got, I guess, a certain level of expertise, I put that in inverted commas, in working with unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, so is aware of lots of the processes and sort of how to navigate around the system.
Jason, can I come in as well? I've read an article after asking these questions yesterday, about my view, which is counselling offered by the Refugee Council. And they've got their own specialist therapists for children dealing with those. Obviously, that's in England, but I'm sure there's probably something with the Refugee Council of Wales. Is that something that a partner we could work with to get more help?
Absolutely. I'd anticipate that we already are. That's something I'll find out. We will be touching a whole range of different agencies, making sure that there are links for these two people.
Because they said that they work with children and young people between the ages of 12 and 21 coming.
The impact upon children residential care, including bespoke arrangements with the profit organisations, independent foster agencies and agencies social work with other staffing. My question is, how will the eliminated gender impact on these providers? And the second point is it likely that these registered provisions will carry on without a profit?
It's a real challenge because based upon what you'll see as some of the costs for residential provision, we know that a number of residential providers are set up based solely on profit, I would say. Some aren't as well, I would say, obviously. And I think what we are seeing and what we will continue to see is a reduction of those providers within Wales, or placements having to take place increasingly out of Wales because those providers will be over the border where we will be able to access them, obviously something which we want to avoid. So I think it is going to become a real problem, hence why we're trying to mitigate against that by developing our own stock. There's a significant piece of work being done through Welsh Government as well and through ADSS, looking at how we can encourage for-profit providers to become charitable organisations or not-for-profit providers as well. But that's a significant piece of work in trying to, I guess, shift those sands. We've got 3 years until the full eliminated agenda kicks in 2027, but those 3 years will be on us in no time. And I don't think any local authority is shying away from the challenges that that's going to present for us. Again, a lot of it will come down to, going back to my initial, I guess, opening, is how we reduce the need as well, the actual need for the use of providers or the use of residential care and IFA care, independent foster agency care, and even in-house care as well. But it is a challenge. Well, like I say, we're trying to mitigate against nationally, across a Wales footprint, across a regional footprint as well, Grant, and locally via the establishment of our own provision, and of course our continued drive for in-house foster carers.
Okay,
thank you. I'd just like a supplement. I just wondered whether or not we thought of talking to our registered social landlords, because I know in certain circumstances they've built specific properties for larger families and that, and I just wondered whether or not that could be part of our partnership arrangement with our registered social landlords.
That's exactly what we're doing, and the provision that we are developing at the moment is in partnership with Melin Homes. So yeah, they're crucial within this development.
Good. Thank you, Jason.
Jane.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jane. Next question is from David.
I think that's been largely answered, Chair, and I think probably subsequent question may go into a bit more detail, so I'm happy to move on.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to come in your question 20?
Yes, thank you. Of the 28 children currently placed with the independent fostering agency foster carers, only 2 are placed with not-for-profit providers. None of the current residential placements are with not-for-profit providers. What steps are being taken towards moving towards the adherence of the eliminated gender at a local level?
I think it's fair to say that we're awaiting the legislation guidance around that from the Welsh Government, which we don't know the content of that yet. and I understand it's further delayed. So we need some of the meat on the bones, I guess, before we can kind of make progress here. But as stated in the report, 9 of the children with our IFA providers will turn 18, so that will take quite a large proportion of them out of that 28.
Do you have any inkling of when the guidance might come through? And also what the guidance might say? Or do you really want to wait until you actually see it?
I think because the consultation process as it goes through, when, for example, it goes through ADSS or WLGA, there's feedback and some challenge presented to it as well, which is being acknowledged. I think at the moment it feels almost held on this piece of string, because we do have significant issues and concerns around some elements of Eliminate. The whole premise of eliminating profit from care, as a principle, everybody is on board with. Some of the mechanisms that sit underneath that and the processes, we've got to say, you know, it's not quite as simple as not being able to use a for-profit provider, because then we'll end up using more unregulated placements, and you know we're almost challenging one part of the system, creating a problem and an issue in another part of the system. So as directors, as heads of children's services, as WLGA as well, significant feedback's going into Welsh Government around the legislation and how we can tune it and amend it so that it meets a great level of need.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you.
Anybody else want to come in before we move on? Okay. Lucy, your question 21, please.
I think I'd like to reframe this question slightly in response, listening to what you're saying, because it's a very tight time frame, isn't it? If you don't even have the guidance about how that's going to be implemented, is there actually, and so I was going to ask the question about this community of action. Would there be a place for this community of action to actually have rigorous dialogue with Welsh Government to actually change the timescales? Because if you don't even have, if you're saying as a local authority you don't even have clear guidelines, how will those timescales be met?
That is part of the discussions that are being had with Welsh Government. I think at the moment, because of I think the political changes in the Senedd, it does feel as if everything's up in the air a little at the moment. So yeah, so we are given that challenge in terms of timescale and in terms of, not just in terms of content, but in terms of timescale and flexibility around that as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Linda, you've got the next question. Do you want to come in, please?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Looking at 4.44 of the report, which states that the support for the Radical Reforms grant funding from Welsh Government, the 5 local authorities in Gwent have established an Eliminate Profit team, as we've just discussed. So my question is, how long will this grant funding be in place? What is the long-term potential for this funding? As this team, we anticipate, will need to be in place for some time. The next part of my question has been asked as a supplementary earlier, but if those parts could be answered, please.
At the moment, it's year-on-year funding. So yeah, it does present a challenge, but I think it's year-on-year funding that's because of the issues we've already highlighted here in terms of the challenges around Eliminate. I think we'll continue in a form. There is a need for that Eliminate Profit team, obviously, going forward because of, again, the challenges we've highlighted. And their focus is around, things like working with the IFAs, working with the residential providers, looking at how we can transfer from for-profit to not-for-profit, and also looking at how, as individual local authorities, but as a region as well, we can develop our own and further develop our own in-house provision, be that through foster placements or residential placements.
Thanks for that response. Yeah, that just adds an extra layer of complexity and difficulty with it being year-on-year funding. So Thanks for all the effort you put into it.
Everybody else okay before we move on to the next section? Okay. Next section is the development. Sorry, Lucy.
No? Oh, sorry.
Probs. The next section is the development of residential provision within Torvine. And the first question comes from Councillor Seaborn. Rose.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies to Linda for my supplementary. I didn't read the end of your question, sorry. My question is to question 23, which is under Gwent County Council years ago, we moved away from our in-house residential provision. We used to have a Millhouse children's home at one time, and now we're moving back. What are the main drivers for this?
The main drivers are demand and the Eliminate agenda as well. You know, as we've said, there's a reduction in supply. There's also the other factors that of course come into play here are around our ability to provide what we will have as a high quality service as well. I think some of our residential provisions, even though they cost a significant amount, some of the private residential provisions don't deliver very good outcomes for children and young people. And so for me, taking the profit side of this out, our key factor here, our key focus here, is around making sure that we have full control over and are achieving the best possible outcomes for children. And keeping children, as we've said, you know, we have no residential provision within Torvine. Being able to keep those children with a higher, you know, degree of complexity, being able to keep them within their communities, being able to keep them within our areas, being able to provide the services around them that the council can provide, rather than being dependent on another local authority area. There's also, you know, going on to the financial element as well. Like I said, there's some of the costs for residential placements are eye-watering. And because of the profit element upon that as well, you know, if we bring provision in-house, we can take that profit element out as well and you know, hopefully have more of a cost-effective service.
You happy with that answer, or
Yes,
do you want to come in? Anything
No,
else? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. That's lovely.
No problems. I've got a question too. The property Green Hill Bungalow will provide accommodation for 2 children. Why has a provision been developed for only 2 children, and will there be scope to increase this number if necessary?
In effect, because of the complexity of children that come into residential, and making sure that we were able to match and give, you know, as close to and as good a family experience for children within a residential setting. Historically, I worked in, when I first started, so I worked in residential provision where there were 20, 30, one place 60 children. So you can probably determine where those places were. And, you know, it just didn't operate, just didn't work. So the ability to have small provision that meets children's needs, where they have familiarity with their carers, that are there, where, you know, where they feel that it's their home rather than a children's home. And, you know, that's something that we really want to be able to develop. There is scope within the provision there. There's an annex as well. So there is scope for us to be able to utilise that. And we're looking for things within that, you know, to utilise it as a step-down process for perhaps care leavers or children who are 16 and just about to go into some form of independence. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, in terms of an ongoing strategy, there is that desire to build up provision across the council as well, and acknowledgement, you know, there is that cohort of children that will require residential care.
Thanks, Jason. That's really good to hear. The next question is question 25, and it comes from Councillor Evans. Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is regarding paragraph 4.49. The project has been delayed as a result of the original tender process being unsuccessful. What is the risk that this round of tender could also prove unsuccessful, and what would be the impact?
There is a risk, of course, that it will be unsuccessful. The impact will be that there will be a delay in us being able to set up an established provision. We are attempting to mitigate against that by having a couple of plans in tandem. So it isn't just a case of us looking and going out to tender. We're looking at how we can collaborate with neighbouring local authorities as well to set up provision. As it stands at the moment, a two-bedded provision to set up our own in-house service, so staffing group as it were. The infrastructure to set that up would be significant, both in terms of numbers of staff and cost of. As we go further forward and we have more residential provision, we can look to set that up in-house, so we wouldn't have to go out to an external provider. So, yeah, we're doing a couple of things to mitigate. We're in discussions with some for-profit providers at this stage to see how they can perhaps come in against that tender and transition between now and 2027 to become not-for-profit providers as well. So working for us within that setting. Like I say, we were looking regionally with some of our neighbouring local authorities, and that's where that Eliminate team that we mentioned earlier are quite crucial in trying to develop regional arrangements as well.
Okay.
Yeah, can I come back in, Chair? Just
yeah.
The reason I asked that, because the tender is out on the 24th of April. So we haven't received any news, or would we wait on for the final date? Because that's only a few days from this date. So I didn't know whether we had heard anything.
Sorry, Councillor Evans, if I can just step in it, obviously because it is in the middle of a tendering process, I don't think that's really appropriate to discuss in a public meeting at this time. Okay, sorry, thank you.
Okay. The question 26 comes from Councillor David Williams. David.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you've referenced, I think, at 450 that the local authority will be applying for additional capital grant funding, and I think, obviously, I've got some prior background experience to know that there were some collaborative approaches across the Gwent authorities, so I guess it's a little bit about how do we ensure we get our share and, you know, how that sort of fits into that approach. So it's a little bit about asking what sort of timescales you're thinking of in terms of both getting the funding and looking to source provision, and then how the identification of suitable sites and properties is going forward, because obviously I presume that there needs to be a close link with planning, for example, and also with the housing strategy team. And as has been referred to by colleagues, you know, what discussions perhaps with RSLs as well. You know, so for example, Ron Evan probably has an over-provision of some types of accommodation, and there are probably some discussions potentially. I think it's a bit general, but I'd welcome a kind of an overview.
So in terms of the funding itself, I think the crucial bit is making sure we're at the table and making sure, you know, we've got our hands out for that. Across the region, you know, across Gwent, we're I think a mature set of services that have the discussions and know that we all have demands and needs, and it never feels that, you know, there's a level of competition. And that we're all, you know, we're all scrambling around. We all understand one another's needs. We've got lots of services, regional services like the MIST team that provides a regional service for our children in the looked after system with complex needs as well. So really much working in partnership with the other local authorities. In terms of the acquisition of properties, we're going through a range of different options there. The crucial one is the relationship we have with our RSLs, which we've already mentioned, and building up those relationships and ensuring, or not building up those relationships because they're there, but ensuring that they're on board in attempting to source relevant properties for us. Like I say, we've used Melin so far. We've discussions with Brunel, discussions with all the RSLs. In addition as well, you know, I know some of the officers involved in this will be looking at properties as they come up online as well, to see if there's anything suitable. In terms of suitability, I mean, there are a number of factors we consider or will consider and have with Greenhill going forward. Is around location, size of property, facilities in the property. So Greenhill, for example, has been spec'd up to a high level that you know, we could have accommodated a child with a significant disability, with levels of complexity, and we would look to do that, you know, so that we almost make any properties we have going forward open properties for any, you know, any level of need that came in through the door.
David, do you want to come back in?
No, thank you, Chair. That's fine. I suppose my only observation would be that, you know, if there's anything that we as members can assist with, it'd be helpful to be aware. But, you know, I'm conscious that, for example, that we have membership on Bronavon, so of which I'm one. So just an observation.
Will we also contact private landlords as well, if, you know, because a lot of them are looking to sell these days, rentals. So. We work with everybody.
Absolutely.
You work with everybody.
Yeah, everything's on the table in terms of acquisition. Yeah.
Right, that's brilliant. Thanks, Tracy. That comes to the end of that section. We're now going on to the ongoing activity to safely reduce the children's looked after population. There's 2 questions on here, and the first one comes from Councillor Steve Evans.
Thank you, Chair. During 2022 to 23, TCBC successfully progressed 28 care order discharge applications. A further 34 care order discharge applications were progressed during 23-24. Is there any follow-on from these discharge applications to ensure that the child remains secure and safe after discharge? Could you answer that, please?
Absolutely is the answer to that, Councillor, in one word. So it isn't just a case of discharging a care order and cutting a child and family, and cutting the ties from us. And where there are ongoing needs, we'll continue to work with that family, that child and family, and the care and support arrangements. Albeit not statutory looked after arrangements then, but we will continue. Some families, some children will be discharging care orders, and we will be able to close the case because of the stage that they're at. There will still be some areas that we will go, well, perhaps you need a little bit of support, or they will be saying, I need a bit more support in this. But it won't be support that requires them at the level of being looked after.
Okay, do you want to come back in? No one?
No, I'm fine with that, thank you.
Okay, question 28. Rose, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, in the past we've had a backlog at the court, and my question is there still a backlog at the court for processing discharge applications? I know sometimes the court can hold everything up and then the list becomes longer.
My honest answer is I don't know at this moment in time. I would anticipate that there is, because of the volume, you know, the pressure that I know the courts are under as well. But I don't know what the degree of that backlog is as far as the court process itself goes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Perhaps we can be told once it's been checked out, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, we know that. Right, the last question, you'll be glad to know, comes from me, is the financial implications. The average cost of an in-house foster placement is £390.62 a week. This compares with an average of £985 per week for an IFA placement. Once the elimination agenda is in place, what will the additional funding used to cover the high cost of IFAs and out-of-county residential provision be used for? Will it be reinvested in support services?
Yes. Obviously, you'll be aware just from the direction of the county plan and the community focus and the focus we have in the council around early intervention and prevention. A big focus for us is around reducing demand. Should be reducing demand so that we can meet needs further upstream and prevent children, families, anybody from coming into and spiralling within the system. So anything that is saved, I guess, the plan is that will be invested into early intervention, prevention, and that community's agenda.
That's brilliant to know, Jason. Anybody else got any questions before? Well, you both be pleased to know that's the end of our questioning. But before you leave, do you want to come in and make any comments on the questioning or any else that you want to update us on?
I guess just to end as I started, really, in terms of the complexities and challenges that we've always had with placement efficiency. I would say always will have, but increasingly so within the next couple of years. But for me, again, that focus that I'm clear on within the service area, it's not necessarily around increasing placements, it's around decreasing demand and making sure, coming back to, I guess, your last question, Councillor, around where we focus a reinvestment, and it should be further upstream to prevent this need coming into our service.
Right, Jason, Kirsty, thank you very much. I'm going to have a well-earned cup of coffee now. Okay. Thank you ever so much. Okay, bye. Okay. That brings us all to the end of our questioning. Please can I remind all members that the meeting is still in formal proceedings and still being webcast. Can I refer you now to the scrutiny activities and invite you to offer your recommendations. So I'm going to hand you over to Rebecca to formulate our recommendations. Thanks, Bex.
Thank you, Chair. So if I can just remind members of the scrutiny activity, the Healthier Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee is invited to review the information contained within the report and determine whether they are satisfied that we are appropriately managing deficits in placement sufficiency. That's the first section. So members, do you have any recommendations or comments in terms of whether you are satisfied that we are appropriately managing deficits in placements?
I think what we said is good, but they've also admitted there's still room for improvement, isn't there? And this is going to meet the challenges that are going to change. As I said, one day you might have 20 people, and again on a weekend. So whilst they are doing the job, you know, we have to be careful that there are still more challenges, aren't there? David.
Yes, Chair. I think the answer is yes. They're doing everything possible to manage the deficits. I suppose my observation is that some things are outside of your direct control, because things like, you know, getting a building signed off, contract to support it, recruitment of foster agencies, foster carers, are all things that you can do your best, but you can't make people do it. I think what I've heard is that they're still looking for some of this to bear fruit, but looking to continue to put the effort in. And I would support that they're continuing to put the effort in, because there's obviously a hope that it will start to pay off and that they'll start to turn a corner in terms of recruiting more foster carers. So every action, and it does feel that they're trying to get the benefits of the wider engagement in terms of the foster network. So, you know.
I think it's probably useful as well to include in that statement that we acknowledge that this is an ongoing and complex process. So, you know, highlighting the fact that, yes, from the, you know, we acknowledge the fact that we've now got this fully paid recruitment officer, and yes, there will, and that there'll be a time lapse before seeing the effect of that, and that we acknowledge that.
I also think that we said that recruitment is still vitally important, and whilst they've gone to the events, I still think we need to pursue that we need to take every possible action to, you know, to be awareness that there is a shortage of foster carers and we need them. And I think what Rose said was absolutely brilliant on question 11, that we continue these events and activities so potential foster carers could liaise with existing foster carers and get some feedback. I think that was really good comment.
Thank you, Chair. So if I'll put the majority of that in the comment section and take from that the recommendation that Councillor Seaborn put forward about where space allows for that potential foster carers are invited along to the retention events. Yeah. Thank you. So then moving on to the second part of the scrutiny activity, which was to assess whether the development of alternative provision will further address the local needs for placements. Do members have any comments in that particular respect?
Beck, can I just say that Linda and Rose have got questions?
Yeah, sorry. I couldn't pick it up on there. It's not showing it. Your hands were up, so I'm sorry. Yeah. So, Councillor Clarkson, you come first, then Rose, and then David. Okay?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I think a lot of what I wanted to say has been said. This is an area where there's a huge amount of change and challenge ongoing currently, and to really be able to assess whether the alternative provision will further address, it needs to come back to scrutiny before it goes out wider. There's extra information that we've asked for about whether or not Rose has asked whether the courts are preventing a blockage, and there's other information we've asked for. So it's really, everything appears to be in place that can possibly be in place, but it's reviewing it in an appropriate level of time.
Thank you, Councillor Clarkson. I did note down some action points rather than recommendations, one of which was, as you've mentioned, about the backlogs. There was also Councillor Jones's comment about checking whether we work with the Refugee Council Wales.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rose, do you want to come in now, please?
You just picked my points up that I had highlighted, the point in my question and the point and the supplementary that you made, Chair, about there was only one more, and that's on question 28. And that was picked up by Bex, so I think I cleared on what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in response to the development of alternative provision will further address it. Yes, it will, but I think there's also going to be a need for continuing to develop additional. That was a very clear message, and taking every avenue to work with housing providers to seek appropriate provision, which would help meet the eliminate agenda and reduce the need for out-of-county placements. So we encourage that to happen, I think, is really what I'm saying.
Catherine, do you have anything to come in? Steve?
Nothing to add. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Jane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, the only thing that would allow me that some of the funding regimes are quite small and quite short. You know, that got a concern for myself because they have to progress forward, but if they're waiting for sufficient funding, it can alter the whole process.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then finally, just whether there are any other general recommendations that members would like to put forward. Councillor Williams.
So I think that last point, make recommendations to the executive member. I would want to, I think one of the biggest risks is the eliminate agenda. That has massive implications, and I would hope that the executive member would be supporting the team in actually putting pressure on Welsh Government to come up with clear guidelines and definitely to change the timescales. Otherwise, there's an enormous risk. This is going to completely undermine the work that's going on already.
Yeah. Yeah.
Linda.
We may add to that about the funding issue, whether it's year on year, there needs to be more security in how the funding's offered. So forward plan.
Mine's probably an observation that I read from the report. Well, whilst the elimination process is going on, how certain are we that it's going to stop all these organisations still operating? Because there's still going to be profit-making organisations. We're not going to eliminate it completely, are we? And that's just an observation, really.
Yeah, hopefully they'll be second choice, not first.
Yes, I mean, yeah.
Sorry, this is just a question to get, because I know we've talked about the eliminated agenda in light of all of this report, but specifically what does it say then? What will the eliminate agenda mean?
Well, they want to eliminate not-for-profit, any home or organisation that's making a profit from looks after children, and put more in-house, and more of our local authorities working together to provide specialist social care for our young people and those with special needs as well. So by 2027, what those
profit organisations not exist because nobody will be using them?
No, that's the observation I made. They will still...
That was my
obviously
question.
Some will still be digressing, but these are, I'm sure that there are still going to be some of these profit-making organisations around. I don't know if the elimination is going to, you know, wipe out all of them, and that's a concern of mine. Linda?
No, it's about making the in-house services more resilient, so as not to have to rely on them. But they're going to need to be there to mop up, and you know, sometimes they are the best place.
Yeah. Lucy?
I just, this is, again, I'm just clarifying because my understanding of the Eliminate agenda, and maybe this needs to be made clearer from the Welsh Government, was not so much eliminating those places that are currently making profits, but working with them to become non-profit making organisations. There's a difference. And again, I suspect that there's a muddled understanding across the board about this, so that really needs to be made clear.
Yeah. This is a thought that came to mind when I was reading the report yesterday. Should we not be working together with these profit-making agencies and bring them in line so they will be, you know, still provided, but they will be in line and more regulated by Welsh Government and local authorities? Sorry.
I think, obviously, not as a recommendation, but something that you can keep in mind once visioning comes. Yeah. I think, obviously, today, as part of this report, you've looked at several sort of elements within the child placement and sufficiency, and it might be worth considering when you undertake your visioning exercises that you may want to consider one or two of these as standalone items. So it may be that you have a scrutiny session on the Eliminate agenda and how you're taking that forward.
Yeah, I think that would be absolutely brilliant, because I think we've all got major concerns on this. So would you be happy with that? David?
Yeah, I think one key part of that is in the Eliminate agenda. I can see that some of this would actually be about in supporting the development of more in-house services, but also what's being done in terms of working with third sector and not-for-profit organisations to develop their capacity to be able to be involved in this as well. So I agree with you. I think we do need a bit more in terms of the overarch of the Eliminate agenda. And I suppose my question would be a little bit, you know, has there been much engagement with the third sector not-for-profit organisations to actually start to look at capacity to expand?
Everybody else want to come in on that? Because we've all got views. Rose?
Yeah.
Rose,
and Linda was before me. Go on, Linda.
Yeah, if I could, please. I think this just highlights the issue that this is early days. It's complex, it's challenging, and it's about us returning to it at an appropriate time. And I like Beck's suggestion that maybe some elements we pick out to be standalone when we carry out our visioning. But this definitely seems to be an area where we need to have further scrutiny. Maybe at a halfway point, these timescales are so tight and there's so much to do, and we're at the beginning of a process. So I just wanted to sort of make that point again, please.
Yeah, I think it's something all we want to keep on the ball and keep on our agenda. Rose, do you want to come in, please?
Yeah, I think there might be a recommendation in this to work with the existing private providers, because they may want to offload their properties if they're not going to continue in the process. So it might work both ways. So I think a recommendation to have a conversation, an early conversation, as soon as we get the guidance through with the private providers, to get some kind of judgment on whether or not they would expressly continue or not.
Yes, it's early days again, isn't it, Rose?
Yeah,
and, I don't think they're going to disappear for 1 minute, because this is a very profitable industry. It's just how this is going to fit in to the expectations of this not-for-profit, and it really seems unclear at the moment, and I'm sure it'll become clearer in the next 12 months.
I think that, David?
I think in terms of a recommendation to the executive member, I think they would obviously, I think it's a bit about trying to convey we would support them in making representations to Welsh Government for clarification around that. It's actually sort of backing him up, as it were, in terms of that. And I think that would be quite a good message to send from this scrutiny committee.
Yeah, agreed.
I think this is a subject that's going to be ongoing for a long time with all our concerns, so we will keep our eye on the ball. Steve, Catherine, do you have anything to come in on? Catherine?
No, nothing, just that I think it was you, Linda, that said about revisiting this and coming back to this, and I think that's hugely important to do that.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So I think there are three main recommendations to pull out of those discussions, and then I will note down all your observations and comments under the commentary section. And obviously there are those 2 action points that I will pick up and get that information to you as soon as I can as well, members. Thank you.
Okay. I think it's been another really good meeting again today. We've had some really challenges on health, but we do seem to be progressing very well, and recommendations have been taken on board. So we come to agenda item 7, which is the date of our next meeting.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously this is the last meeting of this scrutiny year. So once you've had AGM and appointments have been made to the committee, then we'll schedule the next year of scrutiny meetings, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, all that leaves me to say is thank you to all members of the Health and Scrutiny Committee for your contributions and work you've done over the last year. The next meeting will be scheduled once our appointments have been made at the AGM, as Becca said, and I sincerely hope we'll all be on the same committees and all working together and continuing to work. So a big thank you to everyone. Thank you. And enjoy your
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair.